So what we're going to do for maybe about a half hour is just take a look at in the sense of where do we go from here, and what is our direction as we go forward. So the title really is about the defense of the family. So I want you to think with me is, as we prepare to leave later today, is what has changed? What am I going to do with what I have learned in these days together? And how can I bring that formation, that knowledge with me back home, into my parish, into my family life, into my friendships, and also my own attitude towards my own family? Now, what I mean by family is not just one's husband, one's wife, and children, but also broadening that definition of family. And that is, how do we recognize the people around us? How do we look at our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, our extended family? How do we look at our fellow, community of faith, the people who sit with us in church each and every Sunday? How do we look at the people around us and realize that as much and as important as it is for me to love, if I'm married, my wife, my husband, my children, but that love needs to expand, that love needs to stretch to other people. And as we all know, and as we've heard in the presentations, many people are wounded. There's so many broken families. There are families that are struggling with issues within their family structure. For example, there are people dealing with children with addictions, alcoholism, drug addictions, sexual addictions. I hear so often in my travels that parents and grandparents lament that their children and their grandchildren are away from the church. They're away from the sacraments. They are worried about the eternal life of their family. So we have to think broader, so that as a people who, yes, are pro-life, and in a column that is going to be released on Monday, I talk about this term, and that, of course, I like the restrictive term of what the pro-life leaders really thought when they created this title, if you will, what it meant to be pro-life. We're talking about the baby in the womb. That's the primary focus, that we realize that we defend the most vulnerable of our family. But that term is also broader. So not only are we talking about the baby in the womb, but we're also looking at life in all of its aspects, as I said the first night, the first day that we were together. So I want us to start thinking about that. How do we implement that different view? And an example would be in your own family. To think about those within your family that you know are struggling, whatever their difficulties may be, to bring it to prayer first and foremost. To think about what it is that they are struggling with. Also, to be a little more observant of the people around you. Now, let me give you an example. When I was in Rome recently, Father Francesco Giordano, who is our director in Rome and teaches at the Angelicum, a priest now about 10 years, and we were sitting out at a little cafe having a cup of coffee, and I said, for the next 10 minutes, Father, let's just not say anything, but I want you to join me in observing people who walk by. And I want you to pay attention to the posture of people. And we talked about that for a little while, but let me explain what I was doing. If you look at people and you really pay attention, you have to look at their faces and look at the way they carry themselves. Now, in many cases, people walk with their head down. There is, in a sense, almost as if there is a weight on the shoulders, and you can see it. You can visually see that their face is drawn, and you notice that it's more than just a handful. And in that 10 minutes, we took a little piece of paper, and we just noted how many people passed by. Alone, no sense of an emotion on their face other than what I just expressed. And then I said to Father, I want you to think about tonight in prayer. I don't know anything about the persons that pass by, but obviously there is something on their heart that is weighing on their mind as well. And reason why I bring this up is that we as a people of faith and a people who promote life and promote the beauty of life and promote the beauty of the family, that we have to think about our brothers and sisters who are carrying whatever burdens they may be carrying, and to bring them with us to prayer, to bring them with us in our thoughts. And this time of the year, I am very mindful in my own prayer as we move towards, Thanksgiving in this country and all around the world, Christmas time, how many families who are very poor have very little to be able to share with their family in the Christmas time. How many children are coming from broken homes and won't have, the beauty of what many of us have at Christmas time. How many, children are living on the streets because they've been abandoned by their family. How many, husbands and wives are separated from each other and are alone on those days of such speciality. How many people have recently lost a child, lost a husband, a wife, a parent. And there's so many people who are hurting. These are our brothers and sisters. And it's important for us not to look at people in a casual manner. And it's not like I can walk up to Father Welsh and say, now tell me what's on your mind and your heart. I mean, yes, we've just met, and I consider him a new friend. But there are boundaries still. But the idea is that to be able to acknowledge that he is here, and to treat that person in my thought and in my mind and even in my action. And let me kind of broaden the story a little bit. I was in the country of Macau, which is an administrative region of China, and I was in one of the local hotels, and the local priests, they were SALT members. They were members of the Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity. There's brother back there, very good. And they wanted to show me, as you know, Macau is one of the largest gambling centers in the world. Huge, huge casinos. And they wanted to kind of show me some of the secular issues that they're dealing with. And so I'm inside of one of these huge casinos, and where a large car, a Mercedes, could actually drive down the hallway. And there were cars literally inside the casino driving, all right? And so I'm talking to the superior of the community, and we're standing right outside of a coffee shop. Now, I'm looking at Father. Behind me, unknown to me, is an entire show happening. There are people passing behind me, all dressed up in costumes, and I didn't know this. I'm looking directly at Father, I'm listening to Father, and the only way I found out about what was happening was when I got home and they played a video. And I said, "What is that?" And Dr. Brian Close, who travels with me often, like Dr. Joseph Meany and John Fusto and our team, he says, that was happening behind you, and yet you had no idea what was going on because you were so focused on talking to the priest in front of you. Do we do that with people? Do we focus on the person? And I remember one of our presentations over the last couple of days was, think about this. I was at breakfast at the 4 Points Hotel yesterday morning, and a young family, a Catholic family, because they're there with their daughters who are on soccer teams. And they wanted me to pray with them and to bless them before the game. But I noticed at the breakfast table, the daughter was on her phone, the mother was on her phone, the father was on his phone, the son was on the phone. They were not talking to each other. They were all on a phone. And eating their breakfast, and there's no conversation. And in a sense that there's a disconnect. And we need to recognize that defending the family means that we have to defend what the family is, what God instituted in that family, and the communication between husband and wife, children and parents, parents and their children, that we in ourselves in this room, I'm going to give you a challenge. Now, I'm guilty as charged, okay? Turn the phone off. In other words, if you could, for example, if you could practice every once in a while, putting the phone in your back pocket, in other words, put it in your purse. Don't touch it for an hour. Don't touch it for 2 hours. In other words, focus on the person and the people and the situation. I've even been in adoration chapels where people are texting from prayer. All right? So people have gotten, and sadly, too accustomed, to this technology that it's hard for us to disconnect. Now, don't get me wrong. I use my phone. I was in Poland recently with Dr. Joseph Meany, and I was trying to communicate with some local people. They only spoke Polish. So I pulled out my phone. I connected it to a translation app. I spoke in English. The phone spoke in Polish. They spoke in Polish, and the phone spoke to me in English. It's a great tool. It's a wonderful tool. But how much time do we spend on it, and we don't spend enough time with people? Remember the other night I asked a question at the gala. How many of us know the people living next door to us? How many people know the neighbor 2 doors down? You go back just a few years, a few decades, and people lived in a community. People knew each other. They knew the children. They were friends. People visited with each other. Today, people have lost a sense of the other people around them. And this is something that we need to reclaim. This is about helping the family to live as a family, to be mindful as a family, to be thoughtful as a family, and to consider the neighbor as part of that family, to consider, like in the parish, for example, in our church parishes. Recently, I was home in Louisiana to celebrate the funeral mass of a very dear friend of mine who had lived to be 84 years old. And Elaine had never married. She and her sister were both not married, and they looked after their parents. And Elaine was a wonderful lady and very faithful to daily mass, committed to the parish, had been very generous in herself and her time and her energy and resource. And so for the funeral mass, I have to tell you, I was extremely disappointed in the faith community. There were only 12 people at her funeral. You see the disconnect? People don't look at community. They don't see the community as being family. Think here at St. Paul's, if I could be a little bird on a perch watching, that people come in, they maybe talk a little bit to each other, but I bet that same disconnect is here. And we have to challenge this. We have to really break through. And this is what causes problems also within the pro-life movement. For example, again, at the gala, which is a beautiful event, and I've been to many, many of them. And it's wonderful to see so many people supporting the pro-life and family work of a given diocese or a given area. And it's phenomenal and necessary. And the financial resources are so important and necessary. But again, with respect, as I said to them the other night, how many people in that room are not actively involved in the pro-life work? How many of them, yes, they contribute, but how much of them give of their time, of their own self? Think of our parishes. Think right now, look in here. Some of you have been here for the last 2 days with me in our third day. And look at the small number that we have. Now, we're not going to focus on the small number and make it a negative. The people who are here, praise God, they're here. But look at how many more people that believe what we believe, that are with us, but they're not here. They didn't take the time from our priest to our religious to our lay faithful. So you see the disconnect. And so we have to challenge this. We have to break through. If we're going to defend the family, then first of all, we have to hear what John Paul said. We have to realize that every one of us, every Christian, every Catholic, has to see themselves as part of the great campaign. No one is excused from the great campaign for life. But that's the first challenge, huh? There are about 300 chairs in here, and there's only about 35 chairs filled. So it tells you that that's the first challenge. You know, our wonderful MC, and I know this is on film, so I'm not going to say too much, but you know, who's from the Houston-Galveston community, and like Carmen, he holds the same responsibility for the Archdiocese, and they just held an event, and you know, that was very, just like this, something to, especially for a priest and the religious, and very, again, the same issue happened there. A small body came, and it's the idea here, how do we reach those? How do we get to those? And that's people that actually believe what we believe. But that's part of the challenge that we in this room have to kind of talk about. And I'm hoping during your breakout sessions that we'll have today, that those of you who are going to be able to stay and participate will talk a little bit about that. How do we reach to our neighbor? How do we help them to see the importance of defending life and family? How do we bring that conversation to our brother priest as priest? How do we bring that as, we have two seminarians who are here, how do we bring that conversation into the seminary life in a way? How do we bring that as husbands, wives, lay people? And to realize no one is excused, no one. And that's the first challenge. And how many times I hear, and if I were to receive $5 for every time I have heard and hear, and this is respect to my brother priest, lay faithful will tell me, Father, we never hear our parish priest talk about these issues. I'd be a millionaire. That's how often I hear that kind of phrase. And then you hear the parish priest say, or you hear the diocesan director of life and family say, Father, we put on these beautiful programs to help our people, but they don't come. So it's very similar. So it's both and. So we have to really ask ourselves, as leaders who are here, how can we further the conversation? Because the more we have with us, the greater the strength it is to change the conversation, to change the language, to change how people think. Think of 40 Days for Life. Beautiful witness and a wonderful work. But like everything else, there's always just a handful of people. And you think, how can we grow? And think, for example, just think for a moment. Next week in Baltimore, all of the bishops of the United States are going to be gathered for their annual meeting. Now, I say this with great respect. Imagine with me if all, say about 300 bishops. Imagine if all 300 bishops went down in Baltimore, where there is one of the an abortion facility, and imagine if all 300 just stood there and prayed the rosary. Can you imagine the headlines? But what a headline it would be. This is the idea that we have to try to build. And think in the parish here at St. Paul, for example. I don't know the parish. I don't know the parish priest. But the idea is, imagine if this entire parish, every member signed up to participate in 40 days. Imagine the impact that would be. Imagine if all of the parishioners here signed up to help at the Pregnancy Help Center. Imagine if all of the parishioners signed up to participate in the charitable works of the parish. Imagine what could be done. But it's sad that I have to use the word imagine. That's a sadness, that I have to pretend when it should be a reality. And this is the challenge that we in this room have to overcome. And it's not going to be easy, but it's important that we not only talk about it, but we find a way to build the conversation. So how do we help people to see the beauty of human life? How do we help people to see the need of our brother and sister? How do we help people to see the beauty of the family? Now, I'm going to give you another example. A young couple I've known for many years now. They are actually getting around my age, and their children are a little older now and young adults, and some of them married. But when they were young adolescents, it's a large family, but they were not eating together anymore. They were so busy with so many extracurricular activities that the husband and wife realized that this was not healthy, but they didn't know, in a way, how to change the structure. So I said, okay, I'm going to come over, and I need a baseball bat. And so I went to the house with the baseball bat, and we played a game. And the game was very simple. Each child was allowed to choose only one extracurricular activity, only one. And the way that they could choose, because it's hard to choose, is we're going to play what we used to play with a baseball bat, and that is this hand game, all right? And so basically it was to give them a way of choosing. What happened is the children were able to find one thing to do, but the family recommitted to eating their nightly meal together, no TV. They began to pray together as a family. In other words, we had to change the structure in order to provide a focus on what it meant to be a family that prays together, that eats together, that communicates. These are the things that I want you to be thinking about. And you got to start with your own family. You have to start with your own circle. See, it's easy for me to point, all right? But I have to point the first finger at me. I have to think about myself. How am I doing this? What am I doing? And I'll tell you, as a parish priest, for example, there were no functions in the parish on Sunday except for Holy Mass. There was nothing else. There was no dinners, nothing. In order for me to say to them, Sunday is a day for you to worship God, and it's a day for you to be with your family. And so as your parish priest, there will be no functions, no organization, there will be no committees that will meet, nothing. You will be with your family. And I made sure that I oversaw that so that the Knights of Columbus or the Ladies' Altar Society or the various groups try to sneak a meeting in. Ain't happening. I want people to spend time with their families. And that's just an example that, you're trying to change how people think. And also what I tried to do, which was not easy, so when, let's say that, a family would come up to me after Mass and say, Father, you want to come out to eat with us on Sunday? I said, no, I really appreciate the invitation, I really do, but you ought to go and eat at your home, not out at a restaurant. You know why? Because the people at the restaurant are having to work because you're making them work, and if we all stop doing that, maybe those wonderful people could go home to their own families, And I'm not against work by any means, but I'm trying to change how people look at Sunday, a day that's supposed to be a day of rest, a day of prayer, a day of family, a day of spending time enjoying the beauty of God's creation. Not mama at the mall, not dad at this place, and the son over here, and the daughter over there. You see, we have to refocus. And those of us in the United States who have been here at least over the last 50 years, I remember as a little boy, what we called the blue laws used to exist, which meant there were no unnecessary businesses open. By unnecessary, in other words, hospitals, emergency centers, those were always operational. But overall, the grocery store was closed. Other places of business were closed. So if you wanted to cook a pot roast on Sunday, you better have bought that pot roast on Saturday, because you're not going to get it on Sunday. Today, we just take it for granted. We just drive down to anywhere. But the reason why I'm saying this is I'm trying to get us to think, how do you, an individual, how do I convey that there's something beautiful that we want to defend? And right now, people would say to me, Father, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. It's not going to make a difference. Well, you're right. It may not change anything, but I'm going to try nonetheless, because I see a greater value. And isn't that the same reason why we stand out for 40 days? Isn't that the same reason why we have Project Rachel and all the beautiful ways of reaching out to those who carry these burdens of life? Is that not the reason why? For example, as a parish priest, how many priests will say, Father, I make the sacrament of confession available, but no one comes, so they stop making it available? That's not the answer. You sit in that box no matter what. You teach by example. So we have to change the way we in this room think and not think negatively. It would be easy for me and Dr. Corman for us to sit down this afternoon, and we will have a meeting this afternoon to discuss with the team these days together. It would be easy for us to say, well, where were the others? And we will talk about that. But what we are going to talk about is what was the fruit from this? What happened here? What were the good things? What were the good conversations? What did we learn in the breakout sessions? What did people say over a coffee break or over breakfast? What were people talking about? What are the positive things so that we can look at those and build on them? So we have to really stay focused on the good. Keep our eyes on the good, on the beautiful. We have to recognize this in our own lives so that we can help other people to do that. Now, just a few minutes, and then we'll move out into our breakout sessions for those that are able, again, to stay. But what I want you to think about is just use myself as an example. I love to smile, and my wrinkles go up. They don't go down. And I was visiting during vacation time back home, and I had to go in to see a young family, some friends of mine I've known for a while, and we got to talking very late into the very early morning. And, and I really needed to drive home, but I had about a 2-hour drive. And they told me, look, don't drive home. It's too early. It's too late. And I didn't bring any clothes. I had nothing with me. I was just going to visit. But like I said, we stayed longer. So the husband, who's been a dear friend of mine, he says, listen, you can wear some of my pajamas. I'll get you a toothbrush. Stay for the night, and then you can get out and go out tomorrow morning. And I said, okay, well, we'll make that work. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is, as I just said, smiling is just a natural thing. And so the next morning, I awaken, and the friend of mine calls me. He says, I have to tell you something, Boquet. He says, you even smile when you're sleeping. And because I slept on the sofa. All right? And he says, you're even smiling in your sleep. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, hopefully. But I think we need to recognize that we have to be a people of joy, a people who believe. And no matter what the struggles are, no matter what the difficulties are, we have to remain positive. We have to remain a joy-filled and joyful people. And that joy becomes attractive. For example, if you ask religious sisters, religious brothers, or priests, and you ask a young man, young woman, why did you consider religious life? Many times you will hear them say, it was because of the smile of Sister Faustina or Sister Agnes or Father so-and-so. It was a joy. Otherwise, why would I be attracted to something that's miserable? See, the family is being painted in a negative manner today. What God has instituted is being restructured by the culture. And people have a negative. And because so many people are coming now from broken homes and very difficult situations, many of our young people don't want to get married. They move in together, they live together, thinking that's the answer. It's not the answer. But they're fearful, they're frightened. We have to change this. We have to challenge that mindset. Our young people who find themselves even in marriage with a pregnancy, they're afraid of being parents. They rather own a dog, a cat, a snake. They're afraid of having children. See, we have to change the mentality, and it starts right here with us. So this is the challenge.